Welcome to the Supporting Pre-Service Teachers More Equitably session presented by Karin Lohwasser. Dr. Lohwasser is an assistant teaching professor in the Department of Education and program director of the Cal Teach Science and Math Initiative at UCSB. Her work focuses on the effort of teachers to create safe, challenging, and active classrooms where students of all backgrounds can engage in complex and relevant science teaching. Dr. Lohwasser is currently a co-principal investigator on the research and development project funded by NSF titled Effective Knowledge Teachers, How Systems of Support Can Transform Clinical Experience During Teacher Preparation. Her presentation today is based on this research. Dr. Lohwasser, it is a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Evelyn, for this nice introduction. And hello again, everybody. And thank you for your interest in our work of supporting pre-service teachers more equitably in their field placement. So the work is done together with my team at the University of Washington. Mark Winchittle might ring a bell, and some people, Tammy Tasker, Suyen Shim, and Caroline Long. We all work in the teacher education programs. We all have been teachers. So we know what's going on in the classroom, and we understand the challenges that not only running a classroom, but also supporting a teacher candidate in this classroom brings with it. So we set out not to evaluate our cooperating teachers or anything. I really want to say that teachers are my heroes, the teachers who are in the classroom, but we really set out to find in the long run ways to support them better in this absolutely important work they are doing for us. What to expect? So very briefly, I want to introduce our first study because that was the prerequisite that we could do what I'm presenting today. That was a study researching pre-service teachers' opportunities to learn in their field placements. And the second study then built on that and was developing resources to support a more productive learning trajectory in the field for all teacher candidates. And I want to introduce some practices and tools, resources. And I also don't want to hide the challenges we have in getting these resources and the practices into the field. Going forward, I would really like to learn about your expertise, your ideas, your questions, and I know our time is very short, so please feel free to contact me via email and maybe we can have a conversation this way. We had 66 participants, and that is probably at least the biggest study we know of that is out there about really looking into teacher candidates' experiences in the field placement. We all know anecdotally that it's very unique what these teacher candidates experience, but we wanted to look more systematically on their opportunities to learn to learn teaching, the complex work of teaching. And we chose the 3 teacher education programs because they all had the same emphasis on rigorous and responsive teaching. What we mean by rigorous is that we really hope to teach our candidates practices that would engage every student in rigorous science, regardless of their cultural backgrounds, socioeconomic background, or their gender. And responsive teaching for us means that we really put the students' ideas at the center of teaching and learning. So the experience these teacher candidates had in their teacher education program was very similar. But what could they do with all we teach them and all these great ideas they have, how a classroom should look like? What opportunities to really learn the work of teaching did they have in their field placements? So because we couldn't go out to 66 teacher candidates and observe them in a meaningful way, the next best thing we had, we interviewed them for over an hour, 4 times over the year in their placements. And because we wanted to have a more fine-grained ideas what's going on over the course of the placement, because we imagined that the learning opportunities in the beginning might be different than in the end, we asked them to log their experiences every 3 weeks in an electronic, pretty detailed survey. And we also had the ATPA documents, and I'm happy to report everybody managed to pass their ATPA. With this information, one of the research questions we wanted to answer is what opportunities to learn, planning, teaching, and assessment characterize the experiences of teacher candidates over the trajectory of their clinical experience. And we knew it was very, very different for each of them, but we were kind of, let's say a little bit shocked how different the opportunities were for these different teacher candidates, regardless of what they brought into the field. Three examples of our findings. They engaging in substantive co-planning with their mentor teacher. We focus a lot of planning and how to really plan good lessons and especially good units for the engagement of students. But only 37% of our participating teacher candidates had the opportunity of substantive co-planning with their mentor teacher, meaning on a regular basis, and not just tweaking lessons or rearranging activities or straightening out the pacings, but really working on the intellectual work that's going on in the classroom. Also, some novice teachers had the responsibility of substantive planning, not everything. I mean, they had, of course, to follow the context where they are, but really influence this intellectual work in the classroom as early as December. Most of our teacher candidates started when they had to do the ATPA and had to independently plan. But we actually also had teacher candidates who never had the opportunities to put their ideas into their plans and really see how they work out with their with their students. So this loop of I plan, I have this great vision, and I try it out with my students. I see how they react from their reaction and how they engage in what I offer them. I tweak, I go back and really modify my teaching. And this way, I mean, this is the learning cycle that you have as a teacher to really fine tune your own teaching. And some of the teacher candidates didn't even have this opportunity during the ATPA. So, closely connected to that, of course, taking the lead in teaching. So going beyond observe and mimic and just try to do the same that your cooperating teacher is doing. Some could find their own voice and their own style of teaching and what works for them and in their context, in the context they were. They had the opportunity to do that over 5 months of the 8 or 9 months they were in the classroom. And others had probably 3 weeks. So regardless of what their own skills and their own aptitude and their own approach to teaching, how they were prepared to start their own classroom was very, very different for these different students, teacher candidates. But we learned a lot from what works. So there were great opportunities, different opportunities, and from all this information we had and all the information we got from cooperating teachers, we identified as very productive in their work with their teacher candidates. We could start our second study. The second study started for us with developing resources to support a more productive learning trajectory in the field for all teacher candidates. So we recognized that, and we know that, but as I said, we tried to make it more systematic than just our gut feeling we had. Our cooperating teachers are, of course, in their own context and with their own constraints they have, but also there is little communication, at least in the teacher education programs we researched, between the teacher education programs and the cooperating teacher and their setting. So most of the cooperating teacher told us, we do not know what is expected for us. We have never learned this job. We try to do our best, but sometimes we have the feeling we only give the place and let the teacher candidates do what they had learned. And we recognize they have 150 students to teach at the same time while they have the the teacher candidate. So we really thought about how can we support the collaboration between teacher candidate and cooperating teacher in the field. So we started out in developing the resources, and as we did with ambitious science teaching practices, we threw them out on a website for everybody to use, to comment, to discuss, and tell us what works and what doesn't work, and how we can improve the materials we have developed. So, and that's what I just want to open up for you. When you go to this website, what you find is 4 different sections. The one is with mentoring practices and tools. Then trajectories that we suggest, trajectories of learning opportunities for the teacher candidates. Then how-to resources, and we also link out to self-care websites. We have nothing to do with that. They are recommended to us, but we think it's very important to have that up there for the cooperating teachers and for our teacher candidates. Sorry. All right. So with the mentoring practices, you find 6 mentoring practices. And when you click on one, you find a brief video that would introduce this practice, a guide that describes the practice, some tools you could use, or the teacher candidates and cooperating teacher could use together to work on this practice, and some tips and tricks. So now you might ask yourself, why do we need more mentoring practices? There's so much out in the field anyway, and you can read about that all the time. But mentoring a teacher who has her or his own classroom already is very different from mentoring a teacher in your own classroom, a novice teacher with kind of no idea what's going on, and bring them up to a point where they can run their own classroom. And we found there is very little out there for this kind of mentoring and this kind of very, very close collaboration in your classroom. So we came up with 6 practices: reading from the field, getting input from our great cooperating teacher, and from the data we had from the first study. Out of no particular order, we identified analyzing student work together, co-planning with feedback, pre-briefing, important, not just debriefing, pre-briefing and debriefing, modeling the work of teaching, and co-teaching. And all these practices are, of course, only possible if you have this first kind of all underlying practice, making your thinking explicit. And we found that made a huge difference between the cooperating teachers who talked about what they were doing and why they were doing it and what they expected and where they failed and what they thought they could do better and how to modify, and the ones who did maybe a great job, but our teacher candidate said, you know, this classroom is running smoothly. It's great. I have no idea how she's doing that. So making what's going on accessible for the teacher candidate is really important, but it's not really visible for the experienced teacher. And making thinking explicit might sound really easy, but it's actually not. The most things the teacher is doing in the classroom is routine. They have thought about that 10 years ago, but now, I mean, they just do that. They know it's working. But so the cooperating teacher needs to access their own thinking and their own reasoning first before they can share that with a novice. And then the other thing on the other side, what we have seen, if you share everything what you're thinking, that is overwhelming. So you have to also think, at what time in their trajectory is what kind of thinking really productive? And you do that while you also have 150 students at the same time. And you have way too little planning time anyway. So in a very different context, they are working there. They are also bringing up these novice teachers and makes them their partners, not in crime, but in teaching. And really, yeah, so my vision is really that having these 2 adults in the classroom would enhance the learning of everybody, the teacher candidate, the cooperating teacher, and the students. But for that, we really need this collaboration. And the tools and practices we hope will help, but they don't, of course, implement themselves. So I'm talking so much. I want to give you a minute. I have a little bit more to share. I don't want to share your ideas yet, but I want to give you a little bit of a breathing time to think about how one of these practices may look like when done well, and what conditions would support doing them well. What conditions in the school and the classroom for this diet working together. So these are our practices. They are mostly geared towards the cooperating teachers, and say at least what we see now, watch the videos. We also develop trajectories that are suggestions, what might be most productive, what teacher candidates do over the year in the classrooms. And we, as I said, these are suggestions. We have this 4 categories, how teacher candidates, pre-service teachers should engage in learning about their students, the communities they are serving, and the school ecosystem, and then planning, teaching, and assessment. And for each August, September, October, November, December, January, at TPA time in March and beyond, we have more detailed trajectories. Of course, they need to be modified for each setting, and they can be discussed and they can be interpreted in a different ways, but at least they are stepping points for everybody who is involved, for supervisors, teacher candidates, and the teachers in the schools. We also have how-to resources, and I only want to share one because that might be very applicable right now when we are in this crazy time, and that is the professional roommate conversation. Almost everybody is in our research is doing that, and it's had been suggested by a really, really great cooperating teacher, and it's simply taking the time to have at the beginning or before the school year to talk to each other as adults and say, what are my expectations? Who am I? What are my fears? What makes me stressed? What do I expect? And yeah, of course, we all do that, right? All teacher candidates, cooperating teachers do that in the beginning. No, they don't, because it's so hectic in the beginning. And they sometimes forget to take this time. So it's not telling them how they should talk to each other, but really giving them the little nudge and say, no, this is important. Take the time and start asking each other these questions, and continue this kind of conversation from time to time throughout the school year. It will take a lot of tension out of, and a lot of uncertainties and unknowns. And we rehearse this protocol with our teacher candidates in our classes so that they feel comfortable to leading this conversation. But I'm fighting with my thing here. We make sure that they all know what they're supposed to do, and we send out newsletters on a regular basis to both the cooperating teacher and the teacher candidate, so they have a reason to talk about and they know what is expected from them, and there are no secrets. It's not just going to the teacher candidates or the cooperating teachers. They really know both have them. And some of the teacher candidates took that as an opportunity to start conversations or to ask for things to do in a way they would not have done before. It's kind of similar what new mothers get from the hospital. You know, your baby is now 2 months old. This is what you should expect, and these are resources for you, and if you want to know more, you can link. So that's the same idea. So you have this baby teacher in your classroom, and now it's 2 months in the practicum or in the field placement. Now you should expect that they can do that, and you should also give them the opportunity to engage in these practices. Only suggestions, only nudges to talk to each other. And now we are researching what effects these tools and resources have, and also how to actually bring them into the field placement and how they are taken up. And if I can get my thing. So now very fast, just throwing everything at you. I apologize. My question to you, how could these resources fit into your context? Can you see them useful? We have heard some people are use them actually for when they are training cooperating teachers, or how they might be useful in the current situation. So because that is different, and they were of course designed for in-person collaboration and not for collaboration that's online. And what could be some of the benefits, or definitely there are limitations. Okay, I'm quiet and I give back my screen
Thank
to
you for your
Evelyn.
presentation, Karen. I thought that was super helpful, and I was kind of surprised by the statistics that you mentioned, that so few mentor teachers are actually pre-planning with their student teachers. I think that was a comment that Laura Gold made as well. We have a question from Steve. He made a comment that too much too early can overwhelm the teacher candidates, and how do mentors and teacher candidates have honest conversations when the teacher candidate is fearful of a bad evaluation?
Say that again, when the teacher candidate is fearful of
having a conversation, a real honest conversation with their mentor teachers, because they may be fearful of a bad evaluation.
I think the fear is on both sides. The cooperating teachers I've talked to, they are as fearful as their teacher candidates of failing and not being the star teacher they hope they would be. So I think that is a first insight to really share with the teacher candidate, that their cooperating teacher are humans. They struggle with a lot of things. They have families too. They have time constraints too. And so that's the one thing. It's really seeing the cooperating teacher as a professional who is also still growing. And the other thing is, we, as I said, we rehearse these conversations, or at least this first conversation, and that really helps the teacher candidates. And then we talk about how did it go, and slowly, I think normally it's going well. I have not experienced too much fear of evaluation with the teacher candidates I'm working with. And it's a whole year. I mean, they all start out as novices.
Yeah. Anyone else have questions? Because I can ask if no one else has questions. Okay, so jumping off of what Steve mentioned, one of the work that we do as supervisors is to be the bridge between what's going on in the mentor teachers classroom and also supporting our student teachers. And to Steve's point, there is that kind of mentor teachers unwilling to let go of their classroom, and as you shared, some people got 5 months of lead instruction or lead planning, and some people only got 3 weeks because the mentor teacher is kind of reluctant to let the student teachers take charge. And how do we as supervisors help facilitate that kind of dissonance between what we want our student teachers to experience and what mentor teachers are willing to give up?
I think it's a serious struggle the cooperating teachers have, because they get evaluated and they are in the end responsible for their students' learning. And not all of our cooperating teacher candidates are stellar teachers. When they go in, they struggle, they make mistakes, and they are slow, and they are not as productive in teaching. So there are honest tensions in the classroom. I see that. But some of the tools we have developed are going there. I think the co-planning is a very important first step, and really making the thinking explicit and really guiding the teacher candidates over time. And not, I think a lot of situations are when the cooperating teachers say, oh, now you're ready, now you take over. So from one day to another, and that often goes not as well. And that is the experience and the cooperating teachers have, it makes them probably more fearful, because the teacher candidates are not really prepared. So really how to prepare the teacher candidates over time gives them very orchestrated opportunities to engage in planning, in teaching, and in assessment, and really sees the cooperating as a teacher candidate as an asset in the classroom, and how can they help to really improve the learning of the students. So really center the discussion and the discourse more about what students are doing and students thinking, and less of the adults in the room.
Thank you. And I think that speaks to your point about the professional roommate conversations that teachers and or student teachers and mentor teachers need to continuously have, not just in the beginning, but throughout their experience in the classroom. I want to be respectful of time and thank you, Karin, so much for presenting what you have learned through your research. And I apologize for the tech. You would have gone 5 more minutes had my tech been working. But I want to send you off to Tyrone Howard's keynote speech, and because he is an amazing speaker. Thank you all again, and Karen's email is there. If you have any further questions, please direct her or your questions to her.
And you can also communicate through the website if that is a better way for you to do that. Thank you so much, and see you in one of the other sessions.